Have you ever wondered how a small island nation tucked between the Pacific Ocean and the South China Sea could quietly rise to global influence? The Philippines, often overshadowed by its larger neighbors, has been carving out its own path, not with loud declarations or flashy headlines, but with quiet resilience, rich history, and strategic brilliance. Long before the Spanish arrived, the Philippines was already full of life. The islands were home to many barangays, small independent villages led by local leaders called datos. These communities were not isolated, they were connected through trade, marriage, and shared customs. Filipino leaders sailed to nearby islands like China, India, Japan, and the Middle East. They traded goods like beeswax, pearls, cotton, and gold. Isn't it amazing that Filipinos were already part of a global trading system even before the world became truly global? The geography of the Philippines, with more than 7,000 islands, made it hard to create one strong government. But it also made the country perfect for sea trade. Boats move goods from island to island and across the seas. Items like spices, gold, and shells were highly valued and passed through Filipino hands. When the Spanish arrived in 1521, they did not find an empty or primitive land. Instead, they found well organized communities with their own languages, beliefs, and way of life. The Spanish were impressed by the richness of the islands. By the late 1500s, Spain had begun to colonize the Philippines, and over the next 300 years, it became their most important colony in Asia. The Spanish built churches, schools, and towns, but perhaps the biggest impact came from the Manila Acapulco galleon trade. This was a trade route that connected the Philippines to Mexico. Big ships called galleons carried goods like silk, porcelain, and spices from Asia to the Americas and brought back silver and other products. Because of this, Filipinos became part of one of the first truly global trade networks. But life under Spanish rule was not always easy. Many Filipinos were forced to work under harsh conditions. Taxes were heavy and freedom was limited. But even during these hard times, something powerful was growing, a sense of being one people. Though the islands were divided by language and geography, the shared experience of colonization brought Filipinos together. As time passed, more and more Filipinos began to dream of freedom. In the 1800s, educated Filipinos called the Ilustrados started writing and speaking out against Spanish rule. They wanted reforms, fair treatment, freedom of speech. Their ideas spread quickly, and soon ordinary people joined in. The desire for change grew stronger, and by the end of the 19th century, a revolution was on the horizon. What happens when a people long ruled by foreign powers begin to see themselves as one nation? The late 1800s marked a pivotal turning point in Philippine history with the emergence of Filipino nationalism. For over 3 centuries, Spanish colonial rule had imposed a rigid social hierarchy, religious conversion, and suppression of local customs. However, increasing access to liberal ideas and education among the ilustrado class, Filipino intellectuals, and reformists sparked a new consciousness of national identity. In 1898, Emilio Aguinaldo, a military leader and later the first president of the Philippines, proclaimed the country's independence in Kawit Cavite. The Philippine Declaration of Independence was a landmark moment. Filipinos had claimed their sovereignty, but independence was fleeting. The Spanish American War shifted control of the Philippines from Spain to America. In the Treaty of Paris, Spain ceded the Philippines to the US for $20 million. For the Philippine American War was a brutal conflict. Aguinaldo's forces resisted fiercely but were ultimately overwhelmed. The American colonial period introduced significant reforms that shaped the education system in the Philippines. A public school system was established with English as the medium of instruction. The Thomasites, a group of American teachers, arrived to train Filipino educators and promote literacy. Still, the American occupation was not free from exploitation and inequality. Land ownership remained concentrated, labor rights were limited, and nationalist movements were closely monitored. During World War II, the Philippines suffered immensely under Japanese occupation. The war devastated cities, displaced millions, and led to the death of hundreds of thousands. Yet it is also unified many Filipinos in resistance and renewed their demand for independence. In 1946, the Republic of the Philippines was officially established, fulfilling decades of struggle. However, the post independence nation was one grappling with immense challenges, rebuilding after war, forming a stable democratic government, and addressing deep social inequalities rooted in its colonial past. The post war years were turbulent. Political power swung between elite families, and democratic institutions were often treated as tools of convenience rather than pillars of justice. Corruption and inequality festered, making life difficult for millions of Filipinos. Cronyism flourished, and the gap between the wealthy and the poor widened. Still, amid the chaos, the Filipino spirit endured. Despite systemic failures, the country held on to its democracy even after the dark years of Marcos martial law. The people power revolution of 1986 became a beacon of hope, not just for the Philippines, but for the world. In an era dominated by Cold War ideologies and proxy conflicts, this small island nation stood up without violence. Millions of Filipinos, armed not with guns but with prayers and flowers, lined the streets of EDSA. Soldiers defected, nuns knelt before tanks, and citizens stood united. Together they toppled a dictatorship through sheer collective will. That's real power, not the kind displayed through military parades or nuclear threats, but through the unwavering unity of a people demanding change. By the 1990s, OFWs were sending billions of dollars. Filipinos began leaving in droves, not as exiles, but as workers with a mission. OFWs rose from the ranks of the working class to become a vital economic force, both at home and abroad. By the 1990s, OFWs were sending billions of dollars back home to the Philippines, stabilizing the national economy through their remittances. Their sacrifices paid for children's schooling, rebuilt typhoon-struck homes, and fed entire communities. They became nurses in Europe, engineers in the Middle East, seafarers, and domestic helpers, caring for families in far-flung countries. They did not wear medals or sit in boardrooms, but they powered entire industries with quiet strength. Global influence doesn't always come in the form of presidents or generals. It can arrive in the form of a caregiver, helping an elderly patient in Canada, a construction worker building skyscrapers in Dubai, or a nurse saving lives in England. The 2000s marked a shift. Slowly but surely, the Philippines began rising, not just as a provider of labor, but as a creator of value. The business process outsourcing industry exploded. Cities like Manila, Cebu, Davao, Iloilo, and Bacolod transformed into global outsourcing hubs. These cities house state of the art offices running 24/7, serving clients from the US, Australia, the UK, and beyond. Filipino professionals, well spoken, tech savvy, and adaptable, became essential to multinational corporations, whether it was customer service, animation, software development, or finance and accounting. The Filipino workforce was trusted to deliver excellence. Meanwhile, the Philippine economy started to grow at a steady pace. Annual GDP growth often exceeded 6%, making it one of Asia's fastest growing economies. OFWs continued to be a driving force, sending home billions of dollars in remittances each year. Tourism also expanded, drawing millions of visitors to the country's pristine beaches, lush mountains, and vibrant cities. Destinations like Palawan, Boracay, and Siargao gained international fame. The world began to take notice. Filipino music, particularly original Filipino music or OPM, gained traction abroad, especially among the diaspora. Filipino filmmakers earned awards at international festivals, and artists from the country were featured in global exhibitions. Filipino cuisine, once unknown, began turning heads in major food capitals. Dishes like adobo, sinigang, lechon, al halo made their way into food trucks, restaurants, and TV shows in cities like London and Toronto. Did you know that Filipino food is now considered one of the fastest growing cuisines in the world? But the growth was not just economic. Diplomatically, the Philippines began playing a more assertive role in regional affairs. In 2013, the country took a bold step by filing a case against China at The Hague, challenging Beijing's expansive claims in the South China Sea. Despite pressure, the Philippines stood its ground. In 2016, the tribunal ruled in favor of the Philippines, validating China's nine dash line claim. It was a landmark victory, not only for the country, but also for international law and smaller nations standing up to powerful states. This assertiveness signaled a shift. The Philippines was no longer just reacting to global trends, but actively shaping them. Its voice, once small, started carrying more weight on the world stage. In geopolitics, location is power, and the Philippines sits in one of the most strategic locations in the world. Between the Pacific and mainland Asia, near the South China Sea, its position matters deeply to global powers. Military cooperation with America has, has remained strong. Philippines also strengthened ties with allies like Japan, Australia, and India. Its ETCA, or Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, gives it access to military aid, training, and regional influence. But it's not just about armies. Filipino diplomats are increasingly respected across ASEAN and the UN. Global power is not just about guns and GDP, it's also about hearts and minds. Filipino culture has become a global export. Think of singers like Lea Salonga and Bruno Mars, actors, boxers like Manny Pacquiao, and social media stars with millions of followers. Filipino talent is everywhere. And there is something else, kindness. The Philippines consistently ranks among the most hospitable nations. The world is starting to notice the warmth, humor, and adaptability of the Filipino people. Even in tech, Filipinos are rising. Startups in fintech, health tech, and digital education are beginning to scale. Have you ever watched a Filipino family vlog and found yourself smiling? That's soft power in action. So, how did the Philippines become a global power without anyone noticing? It wasn't through conquest, it wasn't through flashy declarations, it wasn't through people, OFWs, educators, creatives, innovators. It was through culture, resilience, and quiet but steady diplomacy. The world is beginning to notice, from the White House to the boardrooms of Tokyo, from tech hubs in Singapore to social media feeds in New York. The Filipino influence is undeniable. So the next time someone asks where the next global power might emerge from, maybe, just maybe, you should look toward the islands. The world might not have noticed, but the Philippines is here and is rising.